And I'm just removing the Facebook ones. Okay, it looks like we're live. Good morning and good
Hello.
evening over there in the States. How are you, Jason?
I'm great. It's great to connect again.
Yeah, same with you. And thank you to everyone that's joining or watching this later. So this is my friend Jason Harringston, and I'm
Well,
just going to
it's actually Hairston. It's Hairston.
Hairston, sorry.
It's okay.
I remember I said that right on our first one that we did.
Yeah.
And yeah, my dyslexia sometimes will kick in. There's been a lot going on. But we'll start with your bio. Um, so it says in your bio as well that you have a desire to become a better human is being the catalyst that led you on your discovery for many profound self-mastery tools. So Jason's passion is helping others and has been life-changing for your clients and for yourself. And we've got little links just below. So with your links, you've got a series with David Icke's Iconic series. And I did watch the one that you sent me last time, and it was amazing. You've also got your YouTube channel, which we've got a link for, Facebook, Instagram, and your website. And I noticed there's some cool products and things that you've got on there now, and like relationship advice. So I highly encourage everyone to go and check out your website as well as the last show that we did together. And how have you been? Because I think it's been a couple of months since we've chatted on show together.
Yeah, it's been a lot going on, a lot of creating going on. So it's an exciting time. I can see a lot of things lining up for me. So I'm just excited, really, to tell you the truth.
Um, That's such a good thing. And what do you feel like your direction is for 2023? Because I think it was 2024, two last year when we spoke.
Yeah, I think my direction is going more towards another book. I'm working on another book. I'll be putting out a coffee book soon, a quote book. So I'm in the works with that. Some more music stuff, So I think moving a little bit more into the creative artist slash teacher type of role,
Yeah.
moving a little bit more into that. I feel like that's really where my power is, where I can really reach people, I think, through music and the quotes and poetry and things of that nature. And that's what I really love to do, because I was an artist before I became a spiritual teacher, and that's really at the core of who I am. So um I'm finding a way to blend all of these different aspects of myself, because I have so many different aspects of myself to bring to the table, and I want to use them
Mhm.
all to spread the message of harmony and balance and truth and love.
Yeah, I love that. And I just get this vision of you as an alchemist. And I think it's so funny because you and I mirror each other in that way that, we don't just do like the one thing. We've got our hands in like many different pies, many different directions. And thank you for joining us, Gypsy Mama. Lovely to see you here. So I guess let's just start. Let's just dive in. I've got a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
And one of the ones that just got downloaded to me just before we got on and we're chatting backstage.
Mhm.
Um, and I think this is a big one, but it's a good one to start with,
Okay.
especially if people are just joining us. What do you feel is like the biology of a good relationship in the spirit of like co-creation and things?
I think the foundation of a good relationship really boils down to, first of all, understanding what a relationship really is. I think we don't understand what relationships are. I think our modern concept of relationships are based upon dopamine rushes and crushes, right? And we think we're in love because we're feeling this chemistry. And that's not really what a relationship should be built upon, right? So
Mm,
a relationship is a learner module to learn more about yourself. So whenever I come into a relationship, I come in as a student knowing that this woman in front of me is going to trigger these parts of myself that are unbalanced that I need to look at, and vice versa. So I come in like that. I come in as a teacher and a student. So we need to understand that relationships is a place rather where you're meant to learn more about yourself and how you can grow. And if two people come into a relationship with that understanding, they can grow together. But see, if one person comes in with that understanding, the other person doesn't, it's not going to last. Or if both of them come in not understanding that, it's not going to last. But if two people come in committed to their own self-mastering and knowing that this is where the healing can take place to where you can go deeper into your own love and share a deeper love with your partner, then it will go to heights that you couldn't even fathom, right? So that's how I come into a relationship. Teach me, love me, teach me. And I'm going to love you and teach you. And that way we learn together, grow together. And from that point, it just gets, I believe that if two people step in with that state of being, that state of mind, those type of relationships can send a ripple effect through society in a profound way that will show up as a reference point within a family unit that can, because we don't have a reference point of this in most cases. So we need reference points that represent what I'm saying, that represent the true understanding of what love and relationships are meant for. And it's meant for you to learn how to evolve out of your limiting traumatic blockages that you've accumulated in this life and past lives.
I love that. And it really ties in with some things that we touched on last time in talking about self-mastery, which is, a huge part of your work. I think the vision that I had with getting that question about, what is the biology of a good relationship, really looking at it from, more of the masculine, feminine, or the polarity balance as well. So I love your answer. The vision that I see like with this too is, I guess, each person fulfilling their own role, not looking to, over provide for one person, and one person's cup, I guess, is overflowing and then the other one's kind of running empty. So I'm looking at it, I guess, from, the egg being like magnetic and the masculine energy being sort of like more seeking out that magnetic energy of the egg too. And I think when we're kind of playing out these roles, and I think I left you, we were, messaging through the week too, and I was talking about, with the masculine energy being the archetype of the warrior, being the archetype of the hunter, and with the feminine energy, to me, I sort of feel like more, I guess, the nurturer, or with my background in natural medicine, the medicine woman. So it's not my job to go out and hunt or to go out and kind of like be the warrior. Yet modern day society kind of asks for women to be the warrior, or to be kind of the provider in some way. So I think that like if we can kind of understand our strengths and our roles, so what do you see, like looking at it from that point of view too, like the biology of a relationship, with those dynamics, like the warrior and the medicine woman?
Okay, so my view, we go get a little deep with this view. This view triggers a lot of people, and I understand why. Specifically women, when I break down what I'm about to break down. But give me a minute, because it's all in my mind. It's coming out, so I just gotta ground it. Okay, first of all, right, when we're talking about masculine and feminine energy, right, we can't look at it from a black and white perspective. We got to look at it from a scale. It's a couple of different places we have to look at it from the proper scaling, and we have to understand the primal animal part of ourselves as men and women and how we're different, right? So, and this is where I get the pushback when I say this. Women are primarily seeing the world through the lens of emotions. Men are primarily seeing the world through the lens of logic. Now we're talking about scale primarily. Now there are exceptions to the rule, and I want to make this very clear. Men and women have masculine and feminine energy. This is facts. But here's a question to the people who feel like, well, women don't see the world more through an emotional lens. When movies promote romantic movies, who do they market the romantic movies to? Men or women?
Women.
Why?
Well, I guess it's the same even with shopping and things too. It usually is that there's some kind of an emotional, marketing message, or some kind of psychology based on, providing that little hook or that little lure. And they're the ones that make the decision a lot of the time.
Well, romantic movies is all about emotions, right?
It is.
Why do women love romantic movies? The Notebook. I like The Notebook. Don't get me wrong, but The Notebook was not marketed towards men.
It took me 10 years to watch that because I knew it was going to make me cry. And then I'm watching it going, I knew it was going to make me cry, and it did. But it was beautiful.
when I saw the Notebook, I was in a different place. Now the way I see the Notebook is like, come on, man, this is too much. It's just
Yeah.
over exaggerated romanticism. But what
Yeah.
I'm saying is, this is proof that if romantic movies are directly marketed to women, it's because women are more emotional and they get pulled to emotional movies. What kind of movies are marketed to men? The
Action.
sports action, because and the action and do and and the warrior, like you said, right? Or sports movies, which deals with strategy, logic. That's because primarily men will pay to go see those movies. And when we talk about emotional movies, women will primarily pay to go see those movies because that's how we're different primarily. But on the scale, there are exceptions to the rule. There are some women who sit a little more in their masculine energy, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're gay. It just means that's how their energy is. There's some men who sit a little bit more in their feminine energy. It doesn't mean that they're gay. It's all kind of different scales, but you have to understand what your scale is. And this is why you have to understand what your scale is when you're getting in a relationship. So if you're a male and you're sitting a little more in your feminine energy, but you still like women, you need to understand that a woman that's sitting a little more in her masculine energy is a good match for you.
Yeah.
And vice versa, right? But me, even though I play in my feminine energy a lot because I'm a mystic, right? But I show up a lot in my masculine energy. It's so I want a feminine woman, right? That's what I want. And when I get with a feminine woman, it pulls out more of my masculine energy, right?
Yeah.
And you want to come in and ground you and let me look
I
out.
resonate with that.
Right. So this is why a lot of people will downplay energetic dynamics within a relationship, and they'll say, well, this is causing people to polarize too much. And I'm like, no, this is actually science. And if you understand how your energy is, you will understand what you actually need within a relationship. Because if you're a woman, and I see this a lot, that works in the corporate world, because when you're a woman and you work in the corporate world, you have to be in your masculine to make it. But when you come home, if you want a masculine man, you have to turn that off, or it's going to be conflict because you're going to come home masculine, he's going to be masculine, and it's not going to be the dance. It needs to be a dance between the masculine and feminine dynamics. Now, me being a man, primarily in my masculine, I can flow in my feminine too. So that means if a woman's having an emotional moment, I'm able to understand what she's saying emotionally, but I need my woman to cultivate her masculine energy so she can understand what I'm saying logically. And if we can both respect our primary lenses, then we could come together and compromise on a bridge. But sometimes in a situation, an emotional decision needs to be made. So the man needs to be open to that. But sometimes in a situation, a logical decision needs to be made, and the woman needs to be open to that. Sometimes the decision needs to have some logic and some emotion combined. So it's all these different scales within the dance that we have to understand if we want to advance within relationships, if we want to have harmony. You can't just say men are all like this. Or if you're a man and think you're just supposed to be masculine, it's going to be a problem. If you're a woman and think you're just supposed to be feminine, it's going to be a problem. But you do have to understand, for the most part, women are primarily going to be feminine and men are going to primarily be masculine, right? So this really needs to be understood, because what's happening is society is creating, what's happening now is the corporate world has created over masculine women, and the media is creating over feminized men. So now the polarization is all the way off. So men don't understand how to show up, and women don't understand how to show up in a relationship. It's all this confusion, and they're flipping the pole, right? And that's causing a lot of damage to the family unit dynamic, to the relationships between men and women as a whole, not even just in a relationship, but just in general. Because we're allowing media to trick us into being unnatural. So we got to get back. And I understand, in women's defense, when women are feminists and they say stuff like, I'm not going to just be in the kitchen cooking for you and just have your babies. I get that, because look, we don't need to go back to the 1950s where it's just like barefoot and pregnant. We need to blend. So for example, what I mean by this is, We can cook together. Sometimes you cook, sometimes I cook. We clean together. We attend to the kids together. But on a primary scale, a woman's going to sit more on her nurturing nature, rather, which is going to
Yeah.
be more over in that area. And I'm going to be more on my masculine, which is more over, but it doesn't have to be rigid. We need to be open to the dance within the roles and not be so black and white, and understand our scale, right? Because if a man who sits more his feminine energy is in a relationship with a woman who sits more her masculine energy, he may want to cook more. You see, so you got to understand where you are, right?
Yeah.
And if you understand where you are in your energetic dynamic, then you'll more understand how to show up in the role in your unique relationship.
And I think there's a biological component that's been altered to do with, the world that we're in, synthetics and plastics and, BPAs.
Soy.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So I think if we can detox and kind of like pare back to the original organic humans that we are, and really kind of notice the psychology of the dance. And I love what you said, because that's really kind of my vision for things as well, is that co-creation in, sometimes cooking together, sometimes cooking, one person or the other. It's kind of like whatever the relationship needs at that point in time. And there will be times where, it is called for, the masculine energy to help out in that way, or times like, when it is the feminine doing that role. And I guess that's where, every relationship is unique and individual. But I think it is about having those conversations and really looking into, all right, well, I feel more naturally, aligned with this role. The other thing too, I guess, is like when we look at the out of balance side of things with the hormones and everything, it's really interesting because like a lot of the hormones and the things that are sprayed on food and everything, we're seeing different biological changes within, birth rates and things going down within sperm production. We're not seeing things kind of like with the higher levels of testosterone. We're seeing women that have higher levels of testosterone and men having higher levels than normal of estrogens. So there has been like a chemical alteration, but I think also through a lot of social media programming and movies and kind of like confusing different roles, there's been like an interesting social experiment. I think we'll just call it that, because, we want to be careful of the language that we're using on here too.
It's covert warfare.
It is.
That's what it really is. And see, when I say things like that, a lot of people are naive to think there is not no people that would go that far to manipulate that much. And see, you're saying that you really don't understand how the world works.
Yeah.
Because we're so powerful as human beings that you have to manipulate. Okay, the people in power have to manipulate us to be in power, or they wouldn't be in power. If they would just naturally show up without manipulation, they would not be in power, right? And that's what a parasite has to do. For a parasite to continually feed on you, it has to convince you to be its food.
Yes.
How do you do that? You find ways to pull people out of their power. That's how. So how do you do that? You confuse gender roles. You make women feel like you overemphasize, because feminism was necessary. There was a time when women couldn't vote in the United States, right? But what has happened is it's been hijacked and turned into this hybrid thing that has become anti-motherhood, anti-feminine. And in women's defense, because we're messed up as men too, to where we've been feminized. Like, for example, if we look at gangster culture, what's ironic is in gangster culture, they think that means being hard and being manly, when actually, if you're over emotional to the point where you're ready to kill somebody over anything, you're actually hyper feminine in that role. It's ultra feminine if you're a gangster. That's not manly.
That's an interesting psychology viewpoint on that. I haven't thought about it in that way, but even like anger as an energy is an emotional charge.
Exactly.
Like we think about it as being a more masculine kind of trait.
Right.
And it's interesting because you'll meet men that are, angry all the time, but it's actually they're emotional all the time. They just don't know how to deal with it.
They are over emotional. Their feminine energy is imbalanced. And we've been marketed and packaged this idea of manhood that's actually ultra feminine. It's weird because a man who's manly will defend himself, but a man who's manly won't be over emotional and ready to fight over one little thing because somebody called you a name. That's not manly, right? So, like I said, the polarization has been flipped through culture to confuse us about who we are and how we need to show up in the world. So you have a whole bunch of men who are having sons, and the sons are seeing their father overreact. And they think that's what manhood is. They turn on these rappers and see these rap videos and they're ready to shoot everybody in every song. So they think that's what it means to be strong. And they think that's what it means to be a warrior, to be over emotional. That's not a warrior.
Yeah.
That's a hyper feminine man.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I haven't looked at more like the gangster culture from that point of view. Yeah, it's like a different warped kind of lens, isn't it? If we're talking about lenses and kind of views on the world. So this kind of leads into another question that I had that literally just downloaded right before we got on. And it was, how can we support each other in these roles? So like as a masculine, how can you support that feminine? Or say if we're talking, in terms of ideal partner, how would it be that you would show up and support the divine feminine? And, this can be in an individual relationship, like with each other, or sort of like as a family unit. So feel free to kind of dance between the two, just in the relationship side of things or in like the bigger.
Well, now I understand because, as time goes on, I continually grow and learn more. So I understand a little bit more when it comes to relationship dynamics. So now I understand that when I show up in a relationship, I'm expecting my woman to see certain things from an emotional view. And I'm expecting it to not make sense logically sometimes, but I'm allowing myself to give her the space to be emotional and to allow myself to be open to that viewpoint and to not totally dismiss it. Unless and see, here's another thing. If it's extremely emotional and extremely irrational, that's a different thing. See, we got to talk about scale. We got to talk about scale. Because if it's way hyper emotional and not in reality at all, I got to be like, hold on. Like, you see? And the same thing on the opposite end for a man. If a man is hyper logical and has no empathy, that's a problem too. We got to talk about scale.
Yeah.
It's okay to be emotional and have an emotional lens, but it's not okay to be extremely emotional to a point where it's unmanageable. It's okay to have a logical masculine lens, but it's not okay to be extremely logical to the point where you have no empathy and it's all about logic. It doesn't matter how people feel, what happens to anybody. So we have to understand scale. So our responsibility as men is to have a grounded version of a primary logical lens. And it's the woman's responsibility to have a more grounded, positive reflection of an emotional lens. And if we understand that as men and women, we can show up in a healthy way and we can support each other and respect each other's differences and understand that both the emotional and logical side have value. Just like in the intuition and the intellect side, both have value. But you can't give more power to one side. You have to understand which side needs to be used or when they need to be used together. We need to understand scale. Everybody is debating black or white concepts when it comes to this. And as a family, within a family unit, my next partnership, I want to have a family, right? And I want to be I want to be nurturing too. I want to be loving and kind to my children, to my wife. And I want to show up and be that rock for her, right? And to support her and to support her from a place, not from just being my wife or a stepmother to my son or just a mother to my child, but as a human being too. Recognizing her as more than just that, right? Recognizing her spirit. Because for me, it's not just about how you look, it's about your character, your spirit, how you show up in the world. That's the main thing that attracts me to a woman. Physical attraction is definitely a part of it, but it's not the main thing for me.
Mm.
And that's another thing we need to understand as men, because me and my mother was just talking about this. She said, I tried to tell y'all when you were younger, you thought it was all about looks and da-da-da. And see, I got a beautiful woman a long time ago, and it was one of the worst relationships I had, and it was shallow, and she didn't even really want me for me, but I needed that lesson. And from that
Yeah.
point on, I got a story about this. You know what happened after that? I had trauma based around beautiful women. From that point on, I wouldn't even approach a woman that I considered extremely beautiful, because I felt like they're gonna all be shallow like her. So I just got over it. I just realized that trauma. It was like, you know what? I just need to be open, and I shouldn't just not give a woman a shot because I think she's beautiful. That's me operating from trauma from the past, right? So now I'm just like, okay, let me be open. Let it all be about character. A woman can be beautiful. A woman can be average, as long as I'm attracted to her. The inner beauty makes you look more beautiful anyway, no matter what scale you are on a beauty, physical beauty. And that's subjective anyway, because we all have our different tastes and likes, you know. But I want to show up as a man within a relationship that can make my woman feel safe, that she can feel like I can trust him. He has wisdom and an intention to really look out for me and the children. Right? That's how I show up.
Yeah, I like that. And it's interesting to look on like modern day relationships and, you know, a lot of the complications and things. And I think a lot of people are also living in survival mode, you know, to do with the stuff that we've all walked through the last couple of years. I think a lot of people are hyper alert, hyper aware, and kind of stuck in this adrenaline type energy. And it's interesting because you were speaking before about dopamine and things, and, you know, not just getting the dopamine hits. But I do just want to touch on quickly what you said about, you know, being, I guess, hurt in that situation or that relationship with the beautiful woman too. And I think it's so important that we're able to discard that old version, to really kind of look into, we can actually have it all. You know, we can have someone who is beautiful, intelligent, emotionally balanced, caring, nurturing, or, you know, on the opposite side of it, you know, strong and masculine, but has that emotional intelligence still. And I think that we tend to think we have to pick one or the other, because that's the way that things are designed in duality. You know, it's masculine or feminine, it's black or it's white, it's, you know, smart or not so smart, you know, beautiful or ugly. And it feels like we, I guess, I sort of not choosing to, it's almost like we're programmed to pick one or the other. We don't actually realize that we are the creator of the life that we get to have. And we get to actually, I guess, break free from that programming. And I think that's where, like, you know, there is a few divergence in that are breaking out of that matrix. What do you see? Like, because I see you as a divergent, and I see you breaking out of that matrix. Is there anything that helped you escape that duality from thinking it has to be this way or that way, or that we have to follow the notebook and, you know, have that ideal romanticized version of life?
Well, you know what made my viewpoint of relationships different since I was a young adult, since I was a child, even, I was very observant. I would watch grown people within relationships, and I would see certain things. Like, I would see how they wouldn't address issues and would build up, and then it would explode, and all these issues would pile up on each other. So I knew as a child, oh, so when I get older, that means I need to express myself when there's an issue and address it, even if it's uncomfortable. So as a young adult within my relationships, when something came up, I remember when I first started doing it, my voice would be real shaky because it's a comfortable conversation, but I would force myself to do it because I knew that if I don't and I let a bunch of stuff pile up, I'm going to regurgitate onto my partner. Right, with all this anger that I've been holding on to inside. So my concepts of relationships came from me seeing people unfulfilled within relationships, from me seeing the disharmony within relationships all around me. And I was like, hold on. We don't really understand how to deal with issues within relationships. We don't know how to communicate properly. We don't understand how our trauma comes into play with all these different things. So it just comes really from me being observant. And then once I started to see for myself and I started to really see movies from an observant point of view, I started to see the program. I was like, oh, because think about this, right? There's a primal masculine plate and a primal feminine plate. So the primal plate of men, right? We are very visual creatures, right? We see the planet. So our testosterone, I started working out more. And when you work out more, it builds up your testosterone more and your sexual energy, it's like,
yeah.
But here's the thing. Media has created content that made us focus so much on that without showing us examples of how to manage that part of ourselves, that what ends up happening is when I was a young kid, I thought it was all about finding a beautiful woman. Oh, I'm in love because she's pretty. That's it. That's the only concept of love I had, is she's pretty. That's because we were taught this through our communities, who were shown this through the movies, right? We have this concept of pretty, pretty, pretty. Now, there's nothing wrong with men being visual and admiring a woman's beauty. But here's the thing that we keep missing out on. How is the woman's character?
Yeah.
Who is she as a human being? Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, women have been programmed to look at women, at men, just as a financial support system. Now, part of that is okay because women give birth to children. So, of course, you want to find a mate that can provide. Like, that's part of your natural plate. When a woman wants a man who is stable and makes good money, that's not a bad thing, right? It's not. But when you want that and you dismiss the character, now we have a problem. So women need to understand, you want a man that could provide for you, but you also want a man that operates with dignity, integrity, respect. And men need to understand, it's okay to want a beautiful woman, but you need to understand, if she is beautiful, is her character beautiful? So what has happened is, it's almost like our primal plates have been inflated to a place where it's so extreme that we miss out on healthy relationships because we're paying attention to the primal plate extreme nature as opposed to the primal plate and the character.
And it's so interesting. I'm just reflecting on, like, past relationship side of things. And there was someone that I dated, and it's funny because, they really sort of just saw the outside. And, like what I do for work, working as a psychic, and, very empathic, very intuitive. So much of like who I am is on the inside. And, I wish to be more seen for that rather than the external. And it was interesting because I attracted this dynamic of this person who was, very like materialistic, all about like the outside. They saw me more as like the trophy wife. And it's so funny because it's like on a soul level, that did not feel fed. That did not feel like seen, didn't feel nurtured. And it's funny, we were just talking about like with emotions and things, coming into this as well. And it was interesting not feeling seen in that relationship. It's easy to kind of, like hide and to kind of feel like you're sinking into the background or just sort of playing this like silhouette of a character. But it's interesting because the opposite of feeling unseen is feeling bold and daring. So the more that I start to become more bold and daring and actually kind of more into like who I am, it was interesting. It was like the relationship just didn't seem to have the strength and power. So I think, I've definitely been on the other end of being viewed as, an object more than once as well. So it is interesting to see those types, because it's interesting when I've picked a partner, it's always been more, I'm very sort of sapiosexual in the way of being attracted to intelligence. And, if they've got stimulating thoughts or ideas and mind, to me, that is so super attractive. Like the external physical looks kind of come secondary to that, because at the end of the day, like in The Notebook, it's like we age, we, sort of, transform. We're not in the original kind of condition or package that we came in. So if we don't have conversation or we don't have intelligence in that, what is it that we were originally attracted to that might no longer be there?
Because when you get old, the physical attraction don't matter as much. So you really need to love and like that person, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's the spirit that stays young, that stays
Right.
beautiful.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's sad is because of this that I was explaining earlier, you have women trying their hardest to look beautiful to get a man. And once they get the man just wants them for their beauty and don't care about
Mm,
the character. And then we have these men trying to make a lot of money to get the women, and the women don't care about their character and just care about the fact that they have materialism. And then what
mm,
ends up happening, the man with money gets the beautiful woman, and then he's not fulfilled, and then she's not fulfilled.
mm.
So what needs to happen is a man needs to be as best as he can be, as stable as he can be, build his character, be a good man, have experiences, build wisdom, and look for a woman who is beautiful on the inside and the outside, right? And then a woman needs to look for a man that can provide stability, protection, and love and cover, but also has a good character so she can get the fulfillment from him as well. So we
Mm.
have to stop looking at each other from black and white terms. We have been programmed from media and our families, right? Because a lot of families tell their daughters, how much money does he make? Where does he
Mm.
work? Or and then the guys will say, how does she look? Oh, let me see a
Yeah.
picture. Is she pretty? Now, it's okay for men to see the beauty in women and say, look, she's beautiful. And it's okay for women to be proud of their man having a good job of making money. But I'm just talking about on a scale wise, we need to understand that we can't allow our primal plate desires to override good character.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good
I think
character
that's,
is a thing that will last.
yeah. And I just think, with the character side of things too, it's going to make life more of an adventure, more interesting, more exciting because with those things fading that we were talking about before with looks, or, say, for example, like the other end of it, a man, if a woman is looking at them to do with finance, is that woman still going to be there? If they've chosen a partner based on their income, if that income's gone,
Mhm.
and looking at it from a masculine point of view, you wouldn't want someone just to love you for, finance or things. There needs to be that deeper essence, that deeper connection. And I think that's where things have gotten a little bit lost, that we are in kind of like a more materialistic version of society. And that's why I really wanted to have this conversation with you, because we both I guess, have that viewpoint of looking at things from like the soul point of view and looking at, how we can co-create. So in the spirit of co-creation, I want to ask you about more the Kundalini side of things and more, within a relationship, looking at tapping into this sort of sacred sexual magic that we hold within us, this alchemy, this fire. And what do you feel happens like when we kind of like merge and bring these energies together? What do you sort of see happen around people? It's a big question, but
Well,
you probably get through it.
I've experienced sacred sexuality on this level, and what happens is a purification occurs within the energy. You go to such a high frequency, and the high frequency, the purification that happens is it starts to purge blockages within you, right? So
Mm,
think of two people as we're batteries, right? Just like the Matrix, where when people come together genuinely, it creates a circuit. And when two people are extremely present with each other and make love from a point of love and deep presence, it opens up gateways to potential and opportunities that downloads within that space if you continually do that, right? So two people coming together in love is more powerful than one person sitting in their own love,
mm,
right? Especially when there's a man and a woman. And with that being said, energetically, okay, physically, we as men give the seed and a woman gives birth physically, but
mm.
energetically, we give the seed too, and women birth energetically.
Yeah.
So if you're a woman, you should pick a man who has plans and goals that you believe in so you can give birth energetically to his seeds. And a man should pick a woman who sees his vision, understands his vision, so he'd be willing to plant the seeds energetically within her. And if that happens, it's going to be a powerful union that will bring forth the energetic seed first, because everything is created energetically first before it shows up into the physical, right? So if a man and a woman consciously understand their roles as the man planting the energetic seed and the woman giving birth to the energetic baby or creation, then they will create a dynasty.
Yeah.
You know, so
And
when we don't, and see, we're in a place where the feminists are mad at men, and then the red pill men are mad at women, and we need to understand that we are more powerful together when we understand who we are and how to show up for each other. We need to stop fighting and learn to understand each other energetically, physically. We need to understand. And what I see what happens a lot is, and I used to do this in a certain sense, to where I remember being in arguments, specifically with my ex, where I'm stating the logical view and I'm dismissing her emotional view. Now, like I said, scale, right? If the emotional view is too far out, the logical view is too far out, you just way off base. But what happens is I see a lot of men fighting for the logical view, dismissing the emotional view, and a lot of women fighting for the emotional view and dismissing the logical view. What we need to be doing is being open to the logical view and being open to the emotional view, just like we need to be open to science and intuition. That's masculine and feminine. Science is masculine, intuition is feminine. But what happens? People who are very intellectual dismiss the unseen world. A lot of people who are strong in the unseen world dismiss intellectualism.
Yeah.
So the bridge between the masculine and feminine has been burned on many different levels, and we need to rebuild that bridge and understand that both sides are important, just like your left and right part of your brain.
Yeah. Yep.
You need both sides. You don't just have a right whole brain or a right or a whole left brain. You have a left brain and a right brain, which represents the masculine and feminine principles in the circuitry in your brain.
Exactly. We've got the corpus callosum right in the center, and that's, what we need. It's that meeting point for both junctions to come together as a whole. When you were talking, more about like the Kundalini energy too, with women being, I guess, like more the egg, and with men being more the sperm, like that attraction, you've got both polarities, like the positive and the negative. And I think with that magnetism that the women bring and that kind of womb space, they're being able to, nurture and support that masculine vision and dream. And it's not to say that women shouldn't have dreams or we shouldn't have visions and things either. And I know that that's not the point that you come from. It's co-creative. Yeah. So it's like, when a man feels supported and feels that you're kind of like 100%, backing and believing in him, the amount that he can achieve is really unbounded. To feel that love, that support, that nurturing, of his dreams and him as a soul and as an individual. And it really helps him to feel seen. When a woman shows up in that way and feels supported. And therefore it also helps that, I guess, that counterpart side for the man to also do that for the woman too. Because sometimes it'll be out of balance where it'll be, one side, being seen and the other side not being seen. So I think it's important to have that co-creative aspect in that, each partner shows as much interest in the other person's mission in the world or their job or whatever is important. I think it's so important to have those conversations. And I even look at it from, putting a roadmap out for the relationship. like, what are our individual paths? What's the trajectory of where we want to go together? I think that's a really good conversation to have, for anyone wanting to co-create or have a conscious relationship, is to get it down on paper, because so much of the time I think that we're coming at it from a perspective of, this is what I think and feel like relationship trajectory. The other person might be on a different path or have a totally different mindset around things. So I think, just having those deep, hard conversations. And if we can look at it from a point of understanding, or look at it at a point from, I know you and I were mentioning childhood and things being like a really big, important thing too, like understanding where someone's come from, or how they've been raised, or how they've received nurturing or not received nurturing. We can sort of understand their lens or their view on the world. So I think all of these things are so important to understand who we are on an individual level. And that sort of leads me into another question around, what is it that we can do individually to make sure that we're showing up as the best version of self, to either attract that relationship or to kind of be co-partner or co-pilot in a relationship?
I think the first thing that you could do is you could really look at all of your relationships from the past and even your current one, and look for similar issues that keep showing up from your partners. Whatever those similar issues are, they're pointing to a wound within you. So once that's the first step, because it's like, okay, I keep attracting a person that's like this, and this issue keeps showing up. There's a polarization to that. That means there's an issue on your end that hasn't been resolved. So figure out what that is and then work on that. Once you start to work on that and chip away that, what you'll notice is you'll stop attracting a partner that has that dynamic, because you don't have the polarity anymore to attract it. Because there are two magnetic polarities happening within a relationship, two different ones. The mirror balance theory and the I'm having a brain fart. The mirror balance theory and the balance and query theory. Here we go. So when two people come together, the mirror balance theory works like this. Two people come together because they have similar trauma that they understand, and they connect within that. We had a similar childhood, or we had a similar whatever, or we think in a similar way. We mirror certain parts of ourselves that are similar. But then the balance and query theory part is where the opposite polarization happens. That's another layer to where, for example, I had a girlfriend who was extremely needy, right? And at that point in time, I didn't understand this. This was the balance and query theory part for us. Okay, let me give you the mirror theory. We both love hip hop. At that point, she was deep in hip hop. I was in hip hop. That's where we met. Hip hop, hip hop, hip hop. So that was the mirror balance theory. But the balance and query theory part was this. She was extremely needy, and I didn't show her enough affection. She was trying to teach me to be more affectionate, and I was trying to teach her how to not be so needy. That was one of the balance and query theory polarization lessons that we were trying to teach each other. But when you don't understand that, right, you could play the blame game, and this person every time. But what is on you? What are you doing on your end that this other person is mirroring within the balance and query theory? Yeah. Once you start to recognize that, you start to change. What happens is every time you chip away at a part of yourself that attracts an imbalanced polarization, you heal, you start to attract healthier people. People. And then you'll eventually get to a point where you've healed enough to where, because no relationship would be perfect, but you've healed enough to where you can attract the person that can meet you on the bridge, to where if there is an issue, it can be resolved because both of you are mature and healed enough to be able to be accountable and to be open to each other's view, right? Because when you're so traumatized and you haven't healed your trauma, you're not really open to another person's point of view because you're too traumatized. You're in survival mode and anger. You can't see clearly, but see, when you heal, then you calm down a little bit and you could be more like, you know what? My bad. I see what you're saying. Right? So I'm more in that space now. I'm more healed than I've ever been. So I know like the next relationship that I'm going to be in, I can show up from a more calm, I've always been accountable, but I'm even more understanding of myself and more understanding about my traumas and healed to a point to where I can show up and be like, okay, let's work this out. Here's an issue. We can calmly talk about it. What can we do? Right? So that's where you want to be. You want to be in a place where you're not so triggered, right? Because think about it. In most relationships, there are a lot of deep triggers that show up. So that's why self-mastery work is very important. Because the more self-mastery you do, the more you heal, the less triggered you will be. And the less triggered that you are, the more calm your nervous system is, and the more calm you'll attract somebody else with a calm nervous system. Now you can actually relate in harmony, right? There'll still be arguments and stuff, but it won't be as extreme because we're talking about scale, right?
Yeah.
The less you heal, the more extreme the triggers will be within relationships. The more you heal, the less extreme the triggers will be. So that's where you want to be.
And I love it that you mentioned about the nervous system. It's been something I've really been practicing a lot, hand on my heart, hand on my belly. How does my nervous system feel in this situation? Or my nervous system's trying to tell me something, like I'm really using it as a barometer, whether it's, just in everyday situations or, something much bigger. It's like, right, okay. And I get to choose to program my nervous system if something feels out of whack or feels like out of balance. And it's interesting because your nervous system will pick up on things before the logic. So it's like, oh, why am I feeling like my heart rate go up a little bit right now? Why am I kind of feeling this like spidey sense tingle? And so if we can catch that ahead of time, we can kind of work out what we're walking into in terms of a situation or in terms of, a party or, wherever it is, a store, and we're picking up like information. And I think that when we kind of peel back to that really is kind of tapping into our biology on a lot of a deeper level. And I think there's been so much distraction getting us to more step into the mind rather than this actual biocomputer that we're in. So if we can really even just pair back to, okay, I'm going to come into this rather than fight or flight, that amygdala response. And we understand the body's intelligence and how the body speaks and the body's wisdom. I think that will help elevate us to this next level so that when we are listening to someone perhaps have their viewpoint, we're not in fight or flight reactivity and having to respond or defend. We can actually be like, you know what, this person's actually, what they're communicating to me, it's not a threat. They're actually upset, or, like really just kind of look at it from a different viewpoint. That's what I've been sort of looking at as a little bit of a lens lately. And it makes it really interesting. And I've just found it fascinating looking at like how my body's responding in so many different situations. And it looks like we've got a spammer in the chat. So yeah, you guys know just to ignore. So, we'll delete that later. Mm-hmm. Oh, and I do have another question. Or is there anything you wanted to say flowing on from that?
Yeah, I wanted to say something about the nervous system, because I grew up in the hood. So when you grow up in any poor area, no matter what your ethnic background is, it's your nervous system will pretty much be shot if you've lived your whole life in survival mode. It'll be even more challenging for you to relax your nervous system, right? Because if you look at even the music in urban culture, it's very hard. Like, so if you're in an environment like that, you literally have to create it. You have to go outside of that environment. You have to find your solace somewhere where you can slowly build up the strength of your nervous system. And if you do that over time, you'll actually get pulled out of that environment. Like, this is how the science works. Literally, like, if you really find a place, even if it's, I don't care if it's a half hour every day, right? It starts off there. Like, I got a place of silence. I can play this music and calm my nervous system. But if you're, in survival mode most of the time, find a little spaces, build it up slowly and slowly. And I promise you, opportunities and things will show up in your life to start to pull you out, because your frequency will dictate what opportunities show up and arrive for you. So just like you, I tune into my nervous system all throughout the day, and I make sure I play calming music most of the day on purpose to keep my nervous system calm, because I understand the calmer I am, the more open I am to opportunities for God to come through me. When you're tense like this, that blocks energy flow. Energy is trying to flow through you within every breath. But if you're breathing tight, you're not allowing God's grace to guide you.
So
But
true. We're living from a particle rather than the wave. We're not allowing
right,
things to come in through the quantum.
right. So people who grew up in poor areas, it's very challenging because many people who grew up in poor areas are in survival mode and they can't relax and they got to survive, right? So ultimately, we need an empathetic system that supports self-mastery for all so we can all heal enough and create safe environments for everybody so everybody can get to a point where we can relax. That's the first step. We need to learn how to create safe environments for each other so we can relax. From there, then it'll be easier for everyone to do the self-mastery. Because if you live in a safe area, it's going to be easier for you. If you're not living in survival mode, it's a lot easier for you to go and relax and kick
Yeah.
back, right? But the more you're living in survival mode, the harder it is, right? So
Yeah,
we have to understand that, right?
definitely.
And
And
sometimes
it
I get,
keeps
oh,
us
go
out of
ahead.
frontal lobe. Sorry.
Oh, no,
It
no,
keeps us out of the frontal lobe, which is more the
yeah,
logical thinking. You know, we are more reactory
right,
if we're living in survival mode too. So, you know, what's the role of that part of the brain? It's to survive, it's to get through to the day. So if we're being kept busy and occupied in survival mode, we're never able to sort of step into that future reality or that future vision that we want for our lives and for ourselves. So I think that's where working with the nervous system and, you know, having sessions that you do. Do you want to maybe speak a little bit about your body work and what you're doing and really helping people release deep-seated things?
yeah. I do quantum energy healing in person, but I do a lot of long distance sessions. I can work on you from anywhere in the world. And what I do is it's almost like getting an energetic massage, right? So like if you're feeling real tense and stressed out, you can come get an energy healing session, and I will project my energy and help clear some of that energetic tension. But here's the thing I always tell all of my clients: I can clear that tension for you within that session, but you
Mm.
have to go and do the internal work to remove the reason why I was there in the first place. You can't, I don't want you to rely on me getting a session every time. You need to attend to the reason why the tense nature is there in the first place. So you don't have to come get an energy healing session to clear it out, right? So that's what it's about. I help people. And a lot of times when I work on people, they have visions of childhood trauma they forgot about. It comes to the surface because my energy that I project, it's love, and it's like steam in a shower, right? When you go in the shower, the steam opens your pores, and what happens? The toxins in your face comes out of your pores. That's the
Mm.
same thing my energy healing does. That's what love does in general, right? Anytime you show up for somebody with true, authentic love, you are the steam for their traumatic pores.
I love that. It's so true. It really is. And that's where you see, you know, some of the most beautiful change. You know, just even say, for example, a teacher that has that love, that nurturing and support for the child, you know, in the class that perhaps has not felt seen,
Mhm.
or and you see this person come into themselves, you see them actually feel nurtured and supported. And, you know, that's where we see huge things in life. Transformation is the word I'm looking for. I do want to ask you one more question because I know that we're at the top of the hour and I know that you have to go. And I just want to say thank you so much for like the value that you've brought. And I look forward to like if you're going to cut up your little clips and that. I love like how you did with our last one, the little outtakes, because I'm like, it's just like pearls of wisdom. But I did want to ask you about like what's your view or your feeling about like astrology and compatibility, because I know sometimes there's deep woo-woo side of things, but then I've also noticed a lot of patterns in that we can see if we look at it as someone's blueprint the time they come in that'll be an obstacle or a test or challenge, or perhaps like a lens on how they look into the world.
Okay. I believe your astrological time when you were born and the time and how the stars were in the galaxy is like a snapshot of your karmic contracts. So it's a snapshot of what you need to work on. So, for example, whatever, I don't know a whole lot about astrology. And I want to say this: I don't lean on astrology for everything. There are some usefulness. I think it has a useful nature to really see patterns and see how different signs are compatible and stuff like that. But I don't lean on it entirely. But I'll say this, right? Um, for example, whatever the sign is, let's say whatever the strong point or the weakness of a sign is, that just shows you that there's something that you need to heal within yourself to move up out of that sign. You know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
I know I'm a Libra / Scorpio, right? But so a couple of people have done my chart and they said, I don't know much about the houses and stuff, but they said I've never seen somebody have so much Libra in all their houses like this.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Well, no wonder why we're having this conversation, about balance and about co-creation.
Right. That's my
I'm a, I'm a
whole. That's
Yeah, so my intuition's like on that lens as well. That's fascinating.
right. So I think that astrology can actually be helpful. I just think that, like, I know somebody who's like, look at my chart. What color should I wear today? And see, the scale is too extreme. I think that it can be something that you can look at. I think anything, even with energy healing, right? I feel like you shouldn't lean on energy healing.
Yeah.
When you see what I'm saying? Like, it's a scale. Self-mastery you should always be doing.
Yes,
That's something,
definitely.
because you're chipping away, Trump, chipping away. You need to. I'm still practicing self-mastery as I continue to evolve as a human being, right? But you don't want to become codependent on things like astrology, and because even human design is powerful too. That human design is on point too. I see, like, oh yeah,
I'm
that
about to
makes
have
sense.
someone on. I'm going to interview someone on human design. But I think I definitely agree with what you're saying on that we can't lean on it. The way I sort of look at it is, if we're looking at the world that we're in and this simulated reality or this matrix, and the astrology is kind of the blueprint of the character. So imagine us being like little Sims characters kind of walking around, some of us walking into walls constantly, or, creating a house with lots of cats, whatever it is. Like, everyone's creating their own reality. But I see the astrology as the script or the code for the character. It's like, reading a role in the play. Oh, okay, well, my character has this, this kind of lifestyle. They like to wear this kind of outfit. These are all things that we can override and change. It's kind of what we've been given as a reference, but it also kind of shows, like how you were saying, where some of the downfalls are, or like different, obstacles, or perhaps things that are going to pop up. So I do think it can be interesting to look at with relationships, and it's interesting looking at the Venus and the sign that you have for Venus. And it's interesting, some partners will have the same sign, so they might have been through the same traumas and different things, but it might be different the way that they climb up out of that. So yeah, I love your very balanced view. There's emotional intelligence behind your answer as well as logic.
Yeah, I think balance in all things is the key to harmony. Period. I mean, you can give me any problem in the world and I can show you where the imbalance is and why it's a problem. I could point to the imbalance. It doesn't matter what it is. So the question is, how can we bring balance back to this area where there is a problem? That's what the answer is every time, every single time. It's the basic principle of life. Balance.
We have another Libra moon here as well.
Oh.
Yeah, and I think that you're right, and it's interesting from a law of opposites. For looking at sacred geometry, and we have that end of opposites, or that end of extremes. There's only a certain point that you can go in different directions before it has to snap back and meet and make the triad.
Now you're talking about the pendulum swing theory, right? So when you look, people not all right. So when you look at women, how women were suppressed, right, and why feminism came to the forefront. I believe it's the pendulums. I believe at some point women ruled and suppressed us. Then it went all the way back to the other point where we suppress women. Now we're going through this weird phase where we're coming to the middle, right? This knowledge that we're speaking about, understanding the value in emotional and logical lenses, this is the dialect and the information that's coming back online to bring us, because like you said, before something can come into balance, it has to go to each extreme and then it swings to the middle. And that's the cycle of life.
Yeah.
That's the cycle of the planet. When we talk about epoch shifts and we talk about the new earth is the part of the pendulum swing theory to where we've experienced both extremes and it's time to come to the middle. And I know we're at that point on the planet now, and that's what I'm here to help teach. I'm not the only one. But when we look at life from each extreme point, we're not seeing the full reality. We need to understand that those are scales that can be brought to the middle. Okay, so same thing with racism, right? Us as Black people, we've been suppressed, slavery, all this stuff. Guess what? Black people ruled and enslaved white people. And the pendulum swing. It went like this. It went like this. Now it's time for us to come together. We've hurt each other. Men and women, we've hurt each other. We suppress each other. Black people, white people, we've hurt each other, suppressed each other. Now let's come back to the middle, because that's the nature of the universe. It has to go through that cycle. But you can wake up and realize where the more healing that you do in your past lives, the closer you'll show up and incarnate closer to the midpoint, right? But if you unhealed the first, or if you start to spiral down, you'll incarnate on a higher extreme, one of those swings up. So the more healing you do, the more you incarnate more in the middle.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think right in the middle, that if we can look at that duality sort of coming and we hit that third point, you know, which is God. It's that higher self. It's that higher viewpoint snapping out of the egos. You know, that essentially is love. So when we come back into love and we come back into gratitude, the other things kind of, they don't matter as much. You know, we start to kind of resolve the issues, and it really is treating each other as we would like to be either seen or treated ourselves too. And I just want to say thank you so much for our chat today. I know that we both have to go, but yeah, I would love to have you back on. I love these conversations, and I sort of see it as like a little bit of a series. And there's a few other questions that I had, but maybe we'll save them for another time. So please, everyone, go check out Jason's website. I'm just going to pop this up again. So there's so much value and information. So if you've liked the conversation we've had today, go check out the Iconic series on your website. I think it was towards the top, your music, your products and things on there. And yeah, feel free to connect with Jason on Facebook and Instagram. You're always posting really insightful things. And I love your memes. You are like the king of memes, as I call you.
And also, I want to let everybody know I'm starting a self-mastery 101 class online. It's a month-long class. It starts April 6th. It'll be from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So it's a month-long class, and I'll be doing it every month. So the first one, like I said, is April 6th. If you go to my link that she's putting up, you'll see the link where you can sign up for the class. And you have to sign up for a free membership with Find Uniquely You, and then you can come into the class.
Well, thank you so much for your time. And I'm sure a lot of people will be checking that out. Thank you.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed our chat.
Peace and love.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone for watching too. And we'll see you really soon. Have a beautiful day.